Cody, Keeper of the Cups by Calfred. When I was small, my parents put the cups on the top shelf in the cabinet. It was very annoying because I was too short to reach them, and I had to push myself onto the counter and stretch my arm as long as it would go, wiggle my fingers so I could nudge the cups from their hidey hole. Even now, at 19, I still have trouble reaching them at a solid 5'2". I think when I was little, I wanted to be special, like those kids who could train their dogs to dance on America's Got Talent, or the people in the gifted program at my elementary school that got to ditch independent reading time to be super smart. That, or I didn't have many friends, or my parents didn't give too much about me. Whatever psychoanalytic childhood schema nonsense was playing on in my head, it led me to Cody. Even saying this sounds so stupid. It makes me cringe. When I would climb on the cabinet and get my cup, I would pretend that a little ghost was pushing them towards me, making them a little easier to reach. Like maybe I imagined the cup moving a nanometer closer before wrapping my grubby little hands around it. The ghost wasn't obvious, but he wasn't invisible, and his one job was to push me the cups. I called him Cody, Keeper of the Cups, because I had just learned about alliteration that day in writing class. None of the other people in the fourth grade had a ghost to push them a glass. Cody was my friend, and I was special for it. As my imagination grew, along with my growing interest in criminal minds from too young of an age, I fleshed out this super creative backstory straight out of a Wattpad fan fiction that changed day to day based on how I felt. Cody lived on this land in the 1800s as a hard-working ranch hand from a pioneer family with a hidden fortune. His brother slashed his throat while Cody was filling up a pitcher in order to secure the family will. Now he haunts anyone in need of liquid to quench their thirst. Cody was poisoned by his wife when she found out he was cheating, circa 1930s. He prowls the cabinets, making sure no other men make his same mistake by drinking out of the wrong glass. It got a little ridiculous after a while. Cody was reaching for a cup on the top shelf as a young boy in the lows of the Great Depression to go panhandle for change. He fell off the shelf and cracked his skull open, and now he haunts the cabinet and plots revenge against whoever laid off his father the day before. Stupid stuff like that. But I guess it kept me entertained. Anytime I grabbed a cup off the shelf, I would say in a sing-song voice, "Thank you, Cody." I guess it could have been worse. I could have been a horse girl or one of those psycho kids you see on Dr. Phil who raps. Fake ghosts are more on the tame side, as far as I was concerned. Anyways, that's what I thought. Although I'm pretty sure Cody just killed this guy in Sigma Nu's fraternity house. So I guess I'm looking for some advice. To start, my name is Dana, and I'm a college student. I didn't think this college stuff through, honestly. I got a 230 on the math subject test, so I'm not super interested in economics. I've seen enough armchair psychiatrists on Reddit to steer me clear from psych. Blood makes me squeamish, so biology's off the table. Lawyers go gray faster. All the good writers end up killing themselves. I hate kids, so teaching is off the table too. For right now, my major is just having a good time and forgetting that my future exists. My destination was Sigma Nu. I shuffle through the front door, nod at the pledge guarding the door. Sigma Nu's basement reminded me of a dungeon. The walls were made of stone, the type you could run your hand over as you walked and filled the divots and pockets of the rock. It was chronically dark, save for the red and green color lights that swung from the ceiling and illuminated the pong tables and the sticky floor with a drunken Christmas splendor. The most interesting part of the Sigma News basement came from the chapter's earliest tradition, thievery. The walls of the basement were littered with stolen street signs, from blind child area to dead end. Sometimes I think of that blind kid and wonder if any Sigma kid accidentally had him run over because the sign wasn't there to remind the drivers. There seemed to be no one I knew, which was a surprise. I shuffled through the crowd, looking for someone to keep me occupied. The Tito's was certainly in my system, but slowly fading as my social anxiety grew. I adjusted my denim skirt, suddenly self conscious, when I felt a hand rest on my shoulder. I yelped and jumped, spinning around to see Ryan Johansson peering down at me, grinning. Dana, right? He's almost screaming over the sound of the music. He's tall and broad and certainly not someone who I thought would know a little sophomore like me. His eyes were really blue. After he died, they were still so very blue. Yeah, I say and smiled wide, maybe too wide. You're Ryan, right? Bingo. He leaned forward and planted his hand above me on the stone wall. You here with anyone? You look a little lost. I shook my head. No, just wanted to see what was happening over here and decided to swing by. He laughed, and his shoulders shook. Not much, honestly. Pretty boring, if you ask me. A little less so now with you here. He leaned closer to me, and I could smell the drink on his breath. Hey, this music is way too loud. I can't stand it. Want to hang out in my room for a bit and get to know each other? I can grab us some drinks. Okay, possible predator, I thought, but also super interesting. And he's also interested in me, even though I look like an elf. You're only in college once, and people always seem to do this kind of stuff. Sure, I agree out loud. Sounds great. Ryan grins, holds up a finger, and disappears into the crowd. When he returns, he has a couple of drinks in his hand for us. He motioned with his head to the stairs, and I followed him up through the foyer into his bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, and he handed me one of the cups before sitting next to me. I raised the cups to my lips, paused, and lowered it. So, I stumbled over my words. You're a senior? I was only a sophomore at the time, so him being interested in me as a senior was kind of important. Ryan took a swig of his drink and nods. Yeah, government international studies major. Trying to enjoy the last of it while I can, you know? I nodded, trying to disguise my racing heartbeat. That's awesome. I'm undecided. Ryan adjusted his position at the end of the bed. Are you gonna drink that or. Yeah, of course. I raised the cup up again, and this is the part where things got really crazy. Pins and needles ran from my shoulder to my fingertips, and I took in a sharp breath, losing feeling in the appendage. The cup slipped through my fingers and hit the hardwood, the murky liquid spilling over our feet. Jesus, I said, I'm so sorry. I'm cut off by Ryan's cough, wet and loud. I turned to him, and his blue, very blue eyes are wide as saucers, and he continued to hack. His drink started coming up from the corners of his mouth. Instinctively, I reached to smack him on the back. The cup he held fell from his grasp, and when it hit the ground, there was an unmistakable sizzle. The floor was melting. The liquor bubbled and popped, chipped away at the floor and burning through the hardwood as if it were a match on paper. I stood and backed away, hand flying over my mouth. Ryan! Ryan opened his mouth to speak. His tongue was tar black, and it too bubbled and smoked, growing larger and larger as Ryan hacked away. I couldn't help but scream, throwing my hands over my eyes and willing myself to keep it together. Ugh, he gasped, and I peeked through my fingers. His tongue was black and swollen and pulsing, pushing against his cheeks and the roof of his mouth, growing larger still as Ryan grabbed at his throat. Bile and blood seeped through his mouth, and he began to choke, fruitlessly grabbing the bed frame for support. I didn't save him. I didn't help him at all. My feet were glued to the carpet, and the pins and needles running through my body kept me frozen in place. I felt myself fall backwards as Ryan too slipped from the bed and met me on the ground. His cheeks were stretched so far he was bleeding. Bits and pieces of his black tongue caught in the cracks. He was turning purple and scratching at his throat, clawing his way through the skin and drawing blood, trapping flakes of dermis under his fingernails. The pressure reached its breaking point, and Ryan's tongue exploded. Black bile mixed with blood splattering the walls, the bed, the carpet, burning holes through any surface it could land on. A splotch landed on my arm and I yelped, the tar-like substance sinking into my skin and setting my limb afire. I glanced at Ryan, and his face was deflated, cheeks hollow and loose, mouth agape but empty. He was not moving. And I said, "What is this?" Ryan's body fell back and hit the ground with a thud. Only then did I notice the words notched into the wood, dancing around the spots of charred flooring and black goop. Bad cup. It was Cody, keeper of the cups. At the bottom of the cup was a C, C, C. Reddit, two quick questions. What do they put in that jungle juice? And how do you deal with a ghost you imagined when you were 7?